giving you useful and practical tips to help you make more money selling travel. This is the Art of Selling Travel Podcast, and here to guide you through it all, your host, Glenda Beagle.
Hello. Welcome back. Today, I am so excited. I am joined by a good friend of mine, Sarah, and Sarah is all about Enneagram. Now, if you've been watching any reels or TikToks or anything lately, you've probably heard Enneagram starting to get talked about, and it all has to do with the numbers and things like that. And then I was telling Sarah before we started, I watched one recently, and the woman's like, I just got it done, and this is my number. And the husband said, "What's that mean?" She said, "I don't know, it means I got my Enneagram done." So I thought, let's bring Sarah on. Let's have a conversation about Enneagram, how it factors into your personality, but then also to how is that going to change the sales side of it? How does Enneagram change things with the sales? So welcome, Sarah.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I am really looking forward to this conversation.
Fabulous. Well, a couple of months ago, I was actually on an episode of your podcast, and we were talking about Enneagram a bit, and you had done my numbers, kind of a rough one sort of thing, and it came back as, I believe it was a 7, and you said those are the ones that are looking for the adventure, and they're looking for new opportunities and things like that, and I kind of laughed. I said that makes sense. And then you were actually pointing out that a lot of travel advisors tend to fall under that. And I was like, yeah, adventure, trying to make other people see the world, have a good time. Yeah, that makes sense.
I know, wasn't that funny? I mean, it's very stereotypical, but sevens according to Enneagram theory, appreciate freedom and options and the big open skies. And so whenever you kind of look at what a stereotypical 7 is, they're usually, have some sort of career in the travel industry, or travel bloggers sometimes will be kind of the go-to career for that one whenever you're doing fun memes and things like that. So I was like, Glenda, there's something here. I think this might be here is what you're saying.
Absolutely. So if somebody has never heard of what an Enneagram is before, do you want to maybe kind of give us the Cliff Notes version of that?
Yeah, there's kind of two things that I think the Enneagram provides us that some of the other, just to kind of help us put it in context, and compare it to some of the other personality assessments frameworks out there, like, DISC and Myers-Briggs, I know most everyone has heard of now. And so unlike some of those others, even like Strengths Finders, anytime you can learn about yourself, it is so helpful. And by all means, please do, because I don't think we have spent enough time studying and understanding and learning about ourselves. One of the key differences with the Enneagram is that it is a framework that has created 9 different kind of archetypes. And it's not necessarily based on behavior, but more so a motive behind that behavior. And so you can have, 10 people in a room behaving similar, but the reason why they're doing something can be very different. And an example that I use sometimes is loading the dishwasher. Some people want to load the dishwasher because they want to take care of their people and they love helping and doing. And other people think it can't be done right. I'm the only one that can load the dishwasher right, so it has to be done. And other people are like, oh, I want to clean up so we don't get germs and nothing gets, we don't get any bacteria growing or whatever, so that's a kind of a silly example, but it's just, you can do the same thing, but the reason why you do what you do can be very different. And then the other thing is that it really helps you identify where you can grow. So there's lots of blanketed advice and kind of one size fits all advice, which has worked for someone very well, I'm assuming, because they're recommending it. But based on your motives, your goals, based on the stories that you have been telling yourself since childhood, there will be certain things that resonate, that will work, that won't work. And so the more that you can understand yourself, the more that you'll be able to understand what's going to work for you and filter kind of some of that advice. And I'm thinking kind of as a business owner right now with that hat on, not get overwhelmed with all the marketing advice and sales advice and all the other recommendations. It's like, okay, based on what I know my strengths are, what I know is important to me, where I might struggle, this advice, this path is going to be the best for me versus somebody sitting right next to me. It might be the opposite direction.
And I think that's so important, just right even from that practicality perspective in business, is I think it also lets us see where we're going to get stuck in the weeds, because sometimes we avoid certain aspects of our business. So we'll kind of spin our wheels in this spot over here. I see it with a lot of travel advisors who will spend countless hours doing marketing without actually putting any marketing out, or they'll spend countless hours of putting out marketing, but it's all because they're trying to avoid actually having to close a sale because they're not comfortable asking somebody for their credit card in the end of it. And so they'll spend a lot of time doing something to avoid doing something else. Whereas when you're aware that that's what it is, you can either work on that skill to improve it, or you can decide which tasks you're not the best one at and where it is that you need to farm that job out. And, whether that's in the marketing where, like I said, there's a lot of people who spend countless hours doing marketing, but nothing actually gets posted. Nothing actually goes out. The question becomes, are you the one that should be doing it at that point, or should you be outsourcing that?
Yeah. And with the Enneagram, one of the things, because you can use it as a tool for information, you can use it as a professional development tool, or you can use it as more of like a spiritual development and growth tool. I mean, it goes deep, deep, deep. And one of the things that it does shine light on it's kind of a balance of, personal development and spiritual growth, is it really shines a light on your shadows, the things that you don't necessarily want to see because you're purposely hiding them from yourself and others, or they're blind spots. There's this concept called the Johari window. I don't know if you've heard of that or not, Glenda, but it's 4 boxes. And one box is kind of the open self. You and others know the things that you do. Then there's the blind spots. You don't know them, but other people see them. And then there's the hidden self, purposely hiding them. And then other people don't know about them. And then there's the things that you don't know and other people don't know. And the thing that the Enneagram can help you with is the blind spots, bringing those to light, kind of holding up a mirror. It's like putting on makeup in the dark or without a mirror, right? You can think that you did it okay, and you won't know until you kind of have a look in the mirror. And then it also brings light, and not light necessarily, but permission to really be yourself and bring those hidden parts to the light so that you're not shoving them down, which obviously never works and eventually leads to stress and burnout and shame and embarrassment, all these things that are just unproductive. So it really allows you to accept things about yourself, and to understand, okay, how am I getting in my own way? Exactly like you said, so that I can keep moving forward and not keep circling the same cul-de-sac.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember one of the first personality tests I took, or maybe not one of the first, but I've taken a lot, not because I have a lot of personalities, but because each one shows you something different. And I think that's partly because every time you take one, more time has passed, and you've grown just that little bit more, or you're looking at it through a slightly different lens. But I remember, and actually it was at the event you and I met at, I think her name was Jennifer Kim. She had one, and it took a long time to go through, and it showed it showed that shadow side to it as well. And whereas I saw it gave you kind of like your primary and then your secondaries and things like that. And it said, these are all the wonderful things about you. And I'm like, of course. And then I read the shadow sides and I'm like, shoot, well, that explains a lot, because we get so excited. We're like, I'm so good at this. And one of the shadows in it, and I see it in the Enneagram as well, is you're so good at this that you forget this, or you spend too much time doing this, or you want to make it that much more. And it was really surprising to see how much that factored in, to see how much that played a role in it, because it's like, but I'm really good at this, so I should be doubling down on it, not realizing that it actually becomes more of a time suck, or I'm not actually moving forward because I'm just spinning my tires in the exact same spot because I'm really good at this one thing, that I didn't actually move on to the next level to expand that one thing into the next thing type thing.
Yeah. And I think that's such a good point that you make. And the way that I will sometimes explain it is just, it's bringing intentionality to whatever it is you're doing. And so you can be good and you can keep doing the thing that you're good at. And, but it's what the problem happens is when it is your go-to strategy, when it's your go-to tool, like you're using the hammer for every project and you're doing it unconsciously. And sometimes it works. And then there's other times where you need a different tool. And so the more that you learn about yourself and understand, other ways that might work for you or other things to unlearn, let go of, then you can be more intentional about bringing in what works and letting go of the tools that don't.
I love that. Because I think we all are so focused on growing that toolbox that we forget some of the tools no longer serve us.
Right.
And yeah, I love that analogy. That one's awesome. So now if somebody is trying to figure out, why would this make a difference? Why, or how do I even know what my numbers are? Like, how do I start?
Okay, so that is such a great question. There are free assessments. I think that's where most people go, is they go to Google and type like Enneagram free assessment. And yes, you can definitely start there because it'll give you clues. But the thing is that not all assessments are created equal. And because the Enneagram really gets to the motive, not the behavior, the thing that most quizzes and tests, especially the free ones, will miss is that below the surface understanding and deep dive. So by all means, take some clues, but don't get married to your results. The other thing you can do is exactly what we're doing here. Listen to podcasts and read books about the different types. And right away, you can start to kind of narrow it down, at least, knocking out 2, 3, 4, maybe even, and then allowing you to kind of continue to focus. And then I don't know, do we want to go through a quick motive and like what each type is running towards? Okay.
Yeah.
So again, each type has behavior tendencies, but that if you don't relate to the behavior in something that you're reading or a test that you're taking, again, explore, like, why do you do that? Why do you feel like you need to be in control? Why, so getting into those. And this process that we're about to, that Glenda has asked me about the typing process, is really part of your personal development journey. Unlike a lot of tests that just, you take and then you get a result, there's a lot of self-reflection, a lot of questioning, thinking that goes into this. And so sometimes people don't want to do that though. They're just like, I just want the answer. I just want to know what I am.
And this is sort of like, to a degree, anytime you're dealing with that internal factor where you're possibly opening something up, you've got to work with professionals who understand this. There's a reason why Dr. Google is not always the best doctor out there, because sometimes those results are a little bit shocking. They can kind of knock you on your butt. But the other thing is too, and I want to include this too, something that I know you've told me and other people when I've taken quizzes like this, is go with your first instinct. Don't overthink it. Don't try and think, well, but if I was in this kind of mood, this is how I would respond. No, just go with your gut reaction. If you're not sure which one, just go with which one was your gut. Don't worry about how it's going to make you look. Don't worry about what the outcome might be, because some people want to get that perfect score, if you will. So they're going to overthink it. And then that can skew their results. And especially if they're not working with somebody like Sarah here, it can leave you saying, but this doesn't make sense, or I don't know what to do with this now. Because when you do just do a quiz or you do just do those free ones or whatever, and you don't have the resources to back it up or somebody to talk it through, sometimes that can leave people a little bit exposed as well. And it's sort of like, okay, sometimes now you need somebody who can put the Band-Aid back on and help you heal that too.
Yeah, that's a great point. And that is something that people mention to me too is, oh gosh, well, in my younger self, in my 20s, I would have done this, but now I do this, or at work, I'm this person, but at home, I'm this person. And that was excellent advice. I'll just reiterate that. Yeah. Just because these type of things are, the whole entire population cannot fit into 9 specific types. We are very complex human beings. But the Enneagram does reflect a lot of that, because once you get into your type, I don't know if any of your listeners are familiar with the Enneagram, they might have heard things like wings and arrows and subtypes and conflict style. And so there's all these other kind of seasonings that go into it. So again, talking about 10 people in a room, you could have 10 sevens in a room, and they may all behave a little differently because of those different flavorings. But the thing that's going to be the same for each of them is that their core driver about why they're behaving that way, even if their behavior looks a little different.
That's so good. Because yeah, it's not that we now are going to put you in a box and that's the box in which you live. This is just kind of that starting point to start recognizing. So what is a wing or an arrow?
So our wings are on either side of you. They are the only wings that you could possibly have. So if you are a type 1, which tends to be called the perfectionist or the improver, the only wings that you'll have is a type 9 or a type 2 on either side of you. And so a wing doesn't mean the type that comes in second. Sometimes people think that, but the wings are, some people really resonate with one wing, sometimes not at all. Sometimes it's a little bit of both, and wings can change depending on where you are in your life, what's going on in your life. Like, oh, I really identify with my type 2 wing right now, or my type 9 one next week. And that can happen, or next year, or whatever. But again, your core driver, the motive will be that of a 1, and the wings just kind of flavor the behavior of how that's expressed.
That's interesting.
And then the arrows, each type. So there is a visual for anybody who's completely new to the Enneagram, and it's a circle. And then within the circle, there's all these lines that connect to each other. And your arrows are 2 lines coming from your dominant type. And according to Enneagram theory, there's one that's kind of called your de-integration or your stress arrow. And there's one called your integration or your growth arrow, but you can tap into both of those. And again, just kind of adds additional flavors to what you look like when you're stressed out, what you look like when you're really healthy and growing and in a good place. And sometimes you may not look like your dominant type. And I think that came up during our interview, Glenda, that you were on my podcast with,
I think so,
just
yeah.
kind of talking about all the self-work, all the self-development growth work that you've done. Some of the stereotypical 7 behaviors weren't showing up for you, but that motive was there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. So now, one of the reasons why I really reached out to you was because it's one thing for us to understand how we think and how we feel and other such, but I think it's really important that travel advisors or just sales professionals as a whole understand that our clients are as complex and as different and unique as we are. So a lot of times when you're in the marketing circles, or even when I talk about sales as well, I talk about the fact that you've got to know who your ideal client is. And that usually falls down into a demographic, to a degree, the psychographics and other things like that. So we know, what they like to do, where they like to go, what kind of expectations they have and things like that. That's great. That's going to help you find the product. But we need to get them through the actual selling cycle. We need to work with them through the consultation, through the proposal, and through the closing and beyond. Now, not everybody wants to be sold to. So how does Enneagram factor into the different personalities or other such of selling?
That's such a good question. So, and yes, you can use it for understanding yourself and then better understanding and having empathy for others. And so I'm thinking, right now, so there's a type 1 who is kind of known as the perfectionist, wanting to be good, have integrity. So they may be coming to you as a travel agent and they want their trip detailed out. They want the structure and being able to give them a detailed plan. Whereas a 2 is known as the helper. They're driven by the need to be wanted and loved and have attention. They may be coming for it with just they want to show their people that they are loved. So maybe it's a surprise gift for a significant other or their family. And so they may not care as much about the details. And you don't have to know somebody's Enneagram type, but just understanding kind of I always say like the vibe, but I know that's kind of sounds like woo woo, but it's like, what's the energy that they're kind of bringing to you?
Well, and that's too, so like in terms of selling to clients and other such, like I've worked with destination brides where I had one couple, they sent me pictures of the pottery that they wanted the hotel to use for their wedding, and they wanted it sourced, and they wanted the hotel to provide them samples of the Mexican flowers, and they wanted this, and they were detailed. Now the hotel was like, that's not happening. But anyhow, that's a different story. But then I've also worked with other ones where they were so wrapped up in making sure everybody else had such a good time and that everybody else could afford it, that they were genuinely sacrificing their own wedding. And so having those conversations around the fact that if we do this, you're not going to get the wedding you wanted. And so the fact that these personalities were so completely different, you can't sell to them the exact same way. And so you need to understand that, yeah, you're not going to 100% know, you're not going to know their Enneagram numbers and things like that, but it's just understanding that you also can't sell to them the same way either.
Yeah. And well, before we recorded, you were talking about, there's a couple different sales style or buyer styles that you talk to your community about. And within the Enneagram, there's different groupings. There's 9 types. So there's all kinds of groups of 3. And there's one grouping on the Enneagram that kind of talks about like how you take in information and process information. And one of those ways, one grouping is really data, rational, logical, if there's a problem, don't get emotional, don't give me the drama, give me the data. There are types out there that are really emotional and just need to vent, whether it's worry, whether it's anger, whether it's anxiety, and they just need to get it out. And they also need to be kind of moved with emotion. And I know you kind of talk about that persona. And then there's a persona or a grouping. And again, this is kind of expressed depending on the type, but this group is the positive outlook group. And so they want to paint the picture of what's possible. So, painting the vacation that they're going to have and selling them on the future of the ideas, and like the details they may not be as interested in. It's, oh my gosh, how am I going to feel? And all the possibilities, all the plans we could make, all the things we could do kind of thing. And so I think in a marketing message overall, making sure that when you're looking at your emails or your sales pages or your brochures, it's like, do I have these 3 energies in there? Kind of how do they overlap with what you're teaching, and just making sure that the way that you need to be sold to is in there, but also understanding there's other ways, things that other people need to kind of hear to feel compelled to take action.
Yeah, absolutely. The way I buy and the way my husband buys is 2 completely different things. Actually, we laughed when I was on your episode because you said you really like to check out what your husband's numbers would be because him and I are so polar opposite of so many things. He is the detail, he is the research, he is all that. And I'm like, I just want to make sure we're going to have fun and that it makes me feel good and things like that. And so, as somebody who wants to just make sure that it's a good time and that, we're going to have fun, we're going to do something, we're going to go on an adventure. I can't sell adventure of the unknown to somebody like my husband.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where having those consultations so that you get to know your clients. A consultation is not just, okay, I want to find out this, that, the other. That's why forms on your website don't work, because that doesn't give you their personality. And in order to effectively close the sale, you have to understand their personality so that way you can pull that in and sell. I don't want to say sell to them, but really you're selling to them in the way that they want to be sold to. And because otherwise you're just in the transaction. You want to build up that relationship so that it's not just this one sale, because a transactional sale is about the seller. That is about you as a salesperson. The relationship sale is about the client. And when clients feel like they're in a relationship, they tend to stick around a little longer.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So I think that is a nice little sample for everybody to discover what Enneagram is all about. So if they want to know more, where can they find you?
Well, I have a download for your group specifically, your listeners specifically. And this is for anybody who just heard the word Enneagram today or has heard of it, but doesn't know their type. And it is a workbook that will walk you through all 9 types so you can have an understanding. And I think for your listeners specifically, that will be helpful so that you can also learn about the other types and think about who you're selling to. That's at sarahlynnco.com/Glenda. And then there is, for anybody who's kind of ready for the next level, like, how do I use this? Like you said at the beginning, somebody had said, oh, I know that I'm this type and love knowing this and reading all the memes, but what can I do with it? I also have an Enneagram and sales guide that is on the same page. So for anybody who's like, okay, I know my type, now I'm kind of want to dig in and see what are my sales strengths and where might I struggle specifically in sales. So there's an Enneagram and sales guide on there as well.
That is fabulous. And if they want to check you out on Instagram, where do they find you there?
I'm at Enneagram NDA on Instagram, and I love stories. So
awesome.
Say hello.
I will make sure I link it all up in the show notes. And again, if you guys have any questions, hit me up on the DMs of Instagram, Art of Selling Travel, or again, if we're not linked in on LinkedIn, let's connect there. Until next time, guys, have a fabulous rest of your week.